Hi all, and
Hey
welcome back
everyone.
to Devs in the Shed. Hey, Matt, Paul, how you doing today? Today with me, I've got Matt and Paul joining. Obviously, we're all devs in the shed. We're all from AWS. We're all developers. For those of you who are coming and joining us for the first time, thank you for joining us. Today, we're actually going to be covering. We're continuing on from a little project that we started a couple of episodes ago for chatbots. Um, I'll maybe I'll give it over to you, Matt, just to give us a bit of a recap on what we covered in last episode and where we intend to go with today's episode.
Maybe before we do that, we'll say like Matt, like your office looks different today. So Aaron, you told me earlier that it was too cold to go in your shed. Now,
Yeah,
Matt, you're not in a shed. Like I am in a shed that it looks like it's not a shed. Like I promise you, it's a shed. And like if you sort of have a look around, you can see that it's a shed. And like it's cold out here, so I have a fire going, but it's been really really cold here. I'm still blowing steam. It's that cold, and you can see
I
that coming.
I went out to my shed and was so cold that I actually had to come inside, have a quick hot shower just to warm up. My wife and interior decorator is designing my shed into a man cave, I guess. So she's going to put some couch and carpet and everything out there. So I'll have a proper man cave and I'll make sure it's properly insulated. So in future episodes, stay tuned. You'll see me back in my shed, but it's way too cold today.
Yeah, it's cold, right? Like I'm my this shed of my two is my man cave shed, and it's it's a bit done up. Obviously, you can see I've got a bed in the background, but it's all set up, and I often like will come out here and work from this area as well. But like where is everybody else from? So it's like it's freezing in Melbourne today. Where is everybody else from? Let us know whether it's cold where you are at the moment.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it is actually like quite warm, right? So usually in my cabin. Today I'm in Brisbane, which I don't know the temperature, but I'm in a t-shirt, which kind of says everything because whilst I've been in Melbourne the last week, I've been in like multiple layers with the air conditioning on the heat setting in the cabin. So it's just a day trip, but I didn't want to give the show up today, of course. I wanted to make sure that I was here with the other guys as we go through it. And then I think when I looked at the calendar, I realised it's also my session, as Aaron alluded to. So 2 or 3 weeks ago, we built a chatbot, or at least we talked about building a chatbot. I think we were in the design stage at the very start. Everyone voted as a community. On the live chat with us as to what we should make, and we came up with the idea of making a chatbot to handle swag. So we built a hello chatbot with AWS Amazon LEX, but we need to add more than hello, I think, to make this chatbot be functional. We need to work out like what products we have on our catalog, what products we're ordering. So we'll make time on going through that today. I'm suspecting that we'll get to the stage where we're building a Lambda in Python. So I've begged and borrowed and stolen some code in the background. But I'll get to screen sharing in a second. Was there anything else that we wanted to cover this week before we
Yeah,
get started? Yeah.
well, actually, before that's probably a good call out as well. If there's anything, I wanted to actually show some slides that I presented like a year ago, just on the basics of what we covered last week. But before I even do that, is there anything in what's new that's interesting, or anything else that you've got going on that's interesting to share yet?
The only thing that I saw that was like what came out this morning they talked about was a whole bunch of new authentication flows with Cognito, and being able to customize your integration with Lambda and different providers for Flutter. So I thought that was something that was pretty interesting. I think that I think that's about it. I don't like. There's a lot of like announcements or like regional enhancements to some of the features being rolled out. But was there anything? I don't think there was anything like majorly specific or worth mentioning this week. Or do you remember anything, Matt?
The only thing that I thought was semi-interesting this week. There was actually a ton, but it was all things that I haven't used recently. This one was Route 53 announcing IP-based routing for DNS queries. So I thought that might help some customers with certain situations where they need IP-based routing for DNS queries. I thought that was quite an interesting announcement. I have not looked at it at all. as to what it entails, but I do remember customer conversations from a few years ago where people were asking for that particular functionality.
Yeah, cool.
Anything from your side, Aaron?
Not anything new, no. At the moment, I've just been fully engaged in what would you call customer engagements around metaverse. So there's a lot of stuff happening. I know that we talked about in earlier episodes TwinMaker, and I think that's generated a lot of interest in customer engagements. So there's a lot of people getting into TwinMaker, looking at building out their digital twins, but also extending that with how do they then embed those digital twins into virtual environments and stuff. So there seems to be a lot sort of starting to happen in the customers' environments around metaverse or building out their virtualized shops and environments. So nothing in terms of announcements, but just a trend, I guess, that we're seeing a pickup or an uptake in like people using digital twin, TwinMaker, and also like standing up or asking for advice on how to stand up virtual environments in AWS. So it's pretty cool. It's a bit of fun to get involved in at the moment.
Nice. No, that's all good. Well, should we kick off, or is there anything else that we're missing on the list to cover, Aaron, today? I don't think there is.
That's it for, I think, covering. Oh, go for it, Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say, I reckon we kick off and like get into like building something and see some code.
Yeah, I might just share my screen really quick, because if we get, I know that we're not big on presentations and slideware, but I just wanted to sort of a recap on sort of the very basics of what we discussed last episode when we started the chatbot, and maybe demonstrate a couple of extra slides. I'm not going to go through the presentation. I just want to show a couple of slides on architecture to give you an idea of sort of what we're talking about and maybe where we could go. So the slide that you can see up here on the screen at the moment is what we'd call a basic chatbot implementation. So essentially all we're looking at here in terms of architecture on the left-hand side here is we build out an app. So this is our own custom web app, and this is the work that the three of us will do over the next few episodes as we build out a chatbot, which talks directly to the LEX API. And so what we're doing when we're actually talking to the LEX API, the logic that we'll build out is the continuation of the conversation, right? And so that conversation on the right-hand side here, in terms of how we structure the LEX bot and the stuff that we jumped into last episode, was looking at the very basics of an intent and what an intent is and how do we trigger an intent through an utterance. So we've got intents and utterances, utterance being the words spoken. So I'd like to order flowers, or if we're going to build our swag bot, then I'd like to order swag. And then slots. Slots are our data that we need to fulfill that request, right? So a data slot could be, I'd like to order some socks. And so now we know that the swag we're ordering is socks. But if the initial utterance is, I'd like to order some swag, maybe the chatbot will come back with what type of swag would you like to order, and give some options, t-shirts, socks, whatever. And then the response is socks. And now we've fulfilled the data. So that's the prompt. The prompts are where the chatbot actually asks, what are the data slots that you need to fill? And then obviously the fulfillment is what we do to actually go and order that swag, and then hand back a message saying, thank you for your order. We've submitted that for you. Here's your receipt or something like that. So this is the basics of a chatbot implementation using LEX. What I'd like to do very quickly is jump through and look at, so we did discuss the extension of just using LEX with actually using that Lambda handler, and that's what Matt mentioned very briefly before in building out a Python handler, is we can integrate LEX with our Lambda, and then we can actually integrate Lambda with anything else. In this architectural example, I've got a whole lot of data stored in an S3 bucket, and then I've used Kendra, which is essentially a smart index which allows natural language processing. So I can give it a sentence, and it can actually help me find the data stored in my bucket based on that sentence. So it understands language context and provides the best response based on handing through to Kendra. So maybe something we can look at in the future. Right now, I just want to focus on, we're looking at, say, the LEX implementation that we just looked at on the previous slide, and the Lambda handler. This one here can actually tie together multiple LEX intents. but also can do extra integration. So here might be the point where we integrate with, say, the order fulfillment system. So if we've got stuff that we can order, we'd go and talk to our DynamoDB that says, what's the stock levels, and we can come back and say, hey, we've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies. I'm sorry, we're out of socks. Like based on what the conversation flow is and what the customer's asking for. Just going to take it a little bit more advanced, and this may be some stuff that we can focus on in a future episode. And look at where we actually go in terms of enterprise level and actually making it scalable and turning a chatbot into something that can be used, in applications, can be embedded across different environments. So the first step that we usually do is we usually create an API gateway to start adding profile information. So we can actually that hovering in the background. And add profile information, which is contextual to the person talking to the chatbot. So, the next time they come back, instead of having to fulfill the entire conversation again, saying, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What's your address? All that stuff. If we've already asked those questions in a previous session, could have stored that into a profile table so that now we can link that with an identifier that says, hey, welcome back. We know all your details. We can pre-fill that back into the LEX session information. So any of those data slots that are required for fulfilling an order, maybe we already have that. We've got the postal address. We've got the details needed, so we don't have to ask it all again. Last slide. This is just in terms of the slide where the last slide that I want to look at is actually how we actually decouple from LEX itself and make it much more scalable and work towards things like a multi-bot solution where we have multiple LEX bots which service different domains, and then the capability to switch between those bots. Or you may just have one all-encompassing bot that actually can switch domains based on what happens in the back end. Either or, what we do is we essentially create a API front. Now our actual web app, instead of having to understand all of the logic for the conversational flow to send through to the LEX bot, all we're doing is we send and receive the basic data of the conversation. So this is my question, this is the response, and that's all we need to manage on the actual application. The rest of that logic for the conversational flow is handled in a Lambda request proxy. So it sits just behind the API gateway and handles all of the communication with LEXbot, and now also that communication with any of the profile data we've stored or anything that we want to do to extend capabilities of the conversation out to a much larger context. I'm going to leave it at that. Probably let's chuck it over to you, Matt, and let's continue on with where we left from last episode.
Cool, and apologies for being a bit of a dork in the background. I realized I had excessive amounts of light bleeding in over the webcam over my face, so I've moved to a background that's a little bit more comfortable for everyone. So let me get my screen share happening. I guess, Paul, could you add my screen now? I think, let me know when it's perfect.
Yep.
So we do have the Swaginator bot started. As a reminder for myself and a reminder for everyone else, I'm just going to have a quick look at what we've produced. So we've got the greeting. The greeting was quite simple. As Aaron mentioned before in his summary, like you got the intent, and then you have the variations of the way that intent can be triggered, which is through the utterances. And then no slots. We're not asking for bits of information to make a decision as a chatbot. But when the customer does say hi, we have a hi, how may I help you? And this will drive the rest of the conversation with the consumer. So what I'm thinking we need next, right? Feel free to jump in and ask questions, as well as Paul and Aaron jump in if there's anything that you want to add. But I think we're going to create a new intent. And this intent is going to be, let's go product list, right?
So, like, while you're going through this, I'd love to hear from the audience, and because I'm thinking about this now, like there was specific swag that's being built out, and we make swag for Summit, we make swag for reInvent. I've been working through and looking with some of my customers on some of the talks that we might be presenting at reInvent, which makes me think about like the types of swag that are available. And so I'd love to hear like what is people's favorite type of swag. And I ask that because like Aaron, Matt and myself have been thinking about what's our next batch of swag that we're going to make to be able to like distribute out to some people. So there's been a couple of people that have won some of our Devs in the Shed mugs. As you've seen, like we rebranded with some new logos, and we've got our Devs in the Shed hoodies. But we're thinking about what might be interesting bits of swag that maybe once we produce and finish this bot, that we can take some direct orders for some people and send out some swag to some of our audience. So if you've got any ideas for what you think would be cool swag, and maybe something like left of center as well, like something different, and we'd love to hear what that might be.
Might be, yeah. I love that idea in terms of if we go and order that swag, maybe one episode, we can do a demo of the chatbot in action, and obviously it'll be free for people to order, but it'll be limited. So however much stock we have, you'll actually see, as people are ordering, maybe we limit it to how many you can order per conversation. But as people are ordering, you'll see the stock levels go down. And then we can go to a fallback intent that says like, sorry, unfortunately, we're out of stock, or, like a great way to demonstrate how you can fall back between the design conversational flow and then when, something goes wrong or when you're out of stock, what do you do in terms of a fallback?
Yeah, so I've created a couple of sample utterances. This is where the problem is of like whoever's building the chatbot has got a limited understanding of like how questions may ask, right? Like I have my own unique way of Englishing, as Paul and Aaron well know. But like, like I've got, I want a shirt. Do you have shirts? So I've come up with a list of ways that people might ask the question. Over time, like it's going to be able to hopefully tie like the smarts of these utterances together. So people don't have to exactly say this. I'm hoping that it's going to be smart enough that if they say, can I get some gear? Like it's going to trigger. But the beauty of LEX is that you can continuously add new utterances that consumers are actually giving you and build up that database of utterances to know the particular intent that the person's actually asking for. So I just added a few in.
Where you say, like, you'll release your bot, and it's the same as any software, right? You release it, and you don't know what people are going to do until they do it, right? So you're going to find in the future that people are going to use terminology that you didn't expect to come up, and you can go ahead and just add that in, and then simply redeploy your app, and it will pick up again as well. So you don't have to like recode anything. You can just add those specific like utterances, and it will detect that and move forward.
Yeah. From that as well. This is slightly off topic, but it's still the under the hood the same thing, or almost the same thing. But working with Alexa Skill Builder. So when you actually develop a skill in Alexa, one of the cool features there is along the same lines is when when there's an utterance that isn't recognized for an intent, you can actually go in and have a look at, these utterances weren't listed to an intent. You can then go and link them to an intent and say, this way of asking for something, that's not something I thought of, but this is what somebody actually used out in the field, link, and then the next time somebody uses that, it's added to your utterance list. The same way that here, we can continuously add utterances to the LEX bot so that you can cover off, many different ways of asking for the same thing or talking, using a similar utterance or different utterance for the same intent.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, as programmers, we can do this programmatically through Boto Free, so we can actually build intents, utterances, and all of that programmatically too. That I actually never, like, even though I was building LEX chatbots back in the day, I actually never used LEX's UI. So this is why Aaron might point out things that I've missed in the UI, because I never really jumped into it. Just because we were integrating with LEX as a conversational platform at my last place, and we were kind of like building our own UI.
The reason I mentioned the differences between Alexa and LEX is because same deal. A lot of how I develop in LEX is through the APIs. And if anyone from the LEX team is listening, would love that feature from the Alexa skill builder capability to then add your utterance to your intent based on what actual people have been using and it hasn't fulfilled or it hasn't linked to an intent. But the reason I say that is because, yes, using the APIs, we actually handle that. So we have the feedback, we have the utterances that are made, so the full transcript, and then we analyze that transcript, and then we can feed back into the intents with new utterances just through the API.
So the other thing is, like, I've probably created myself some technical debt here, like when it comes to chatbots. Like, I've made some complete noob mistakes, but I'm completely fine with them. So this is supposed to be a product listing, right? Can I get some swag? What gear and offer? Like, these ones are on the mark. But like, if the person comes in and they want a t-shirt and we have a subcategory of t-shirts, so we have one t-shirt, I should probably take them directly to that skill rather than have the utterance trigger off to the product listing catalog skill, right? So this is where like you've got to think about how you want to build out. Just like when you're building an application, you've got to think about what are your use cases, what are you going to expand into, how simple do you want to keep things, or how complex is this going to get very fast over time. There's no right or wrong answer. But you know, like loot boxes, well, maybe I've got like a pack of loot that we're planning to offer eventually as well. So these are like, I'm thinking in my head, like I've probably trapped myself a little bit here, and if this expands over time, I might want to rework it. So I wanted to kind of invite people to the way that I think about these things as I work through them. Now, there's no checks on what the stock is in the back end, right? At the moment, but we do want to make sure that this particular intent is set up and firing, and then what we're going to do is create a Lambda. So what I'm going to say is, in the closing response, I'm going to say we have t-shirts on offer. So this is where I think we're actually going to trap ourselves, and I'm going to have to delete those t-shirts because I want to go through and show them a particular t-shirt. So I'll rework that logic later. But what I'll do is I'll just make sure that we're in a good state first. So I'll just save the intent. I will build my LEX bot, and then I'll do a quick test before we start to hook in a Lambda to have a little bit of logic in the background. And I'll walk you through kind of like a template that we've got, how Lambda works with LEX. So we'll do that in a second. And then what we'll do is we'll find this particular intent, and we'll do something with it programmatically.
So while you're setting that up, Matt, Trillions Spears asked, if you put API gateway in front of your LEX bot, how do you expose effectively how do you expose your Swagger documentation? So how do people then interact with that API there? So like I sort of answered that, like depending on what you've got directly behind that API gateway, you can expose like a Swagger endpoint, and you could use Swagger or something similar to design your own. So like, I don't know, let's just say you're building the back end of your application in .NET or whatever, you could expose it that way. But there's also the API Gateway Developer Portal where you can build that sort of documentation out as well. So I've linked like one of the blog posts on what that looks like. And I guess when we think about building APIs, as developers, a lot of the time when we build an API, we neglect to build that documentation that comes out of the back of it, whether we're using like Swagger or API or something like that, some mechanism to like document what your API is supposed to do and how like consumers of that API can interact with that. And that might be less important for somebody that's building an app or an internal app to send it back towards, or maybe it's equally important, right? If you've got an API first strategy. But if you're building APIs for public consumption, then you definitely want to be considering how you document that and expose, expose the ability to communicate and interact, and what the methods, what the specific parameters mean for your API as you're going ahead and building that.
Excellent. So we have t-shirts on offer. So it looks like we're in a good state to start, right? So what I have in the background in VS Code is a simple LEX bot. So this is from our financial services LEX bot tutorial example. I've commented out the stuff that was like specific to a particular intent. So this should kind of run and do nothing because it's not really firing when it detects an intent, but what this Lambda is doing is it's effectively capturing the list of intents that have been fed in. So if I go down the bottom, you've got your standard Lambda handler. You've got your event being fed into the Lambda, what triggered it. You've got the context of that there as well. Then there is a response, which is going to be given by this function, which is our dispatch. And like within that, if I check out the logic that was there before, like what it's going to do is it's going to return another function that's been written whenever it notices that the intent name is check balance. So it's going to return whatever the check balance intent is. So it's going to give that back to LEX. And so if we look through this logic, and hopefully you can kind of read that even though it's grey on grey.
It's
we go in here.
Zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, I'll zoom in a little bit. There we go. I might get rid of the sidebar maybe as well. Here we go. So so here, like it can load in. You can actually see, you can read some of the attributes that are being fed to LEX. You can see what slots have had data in. You can access that, and then basically it's going to post a message back through to LEX from the Lambda that says, "Thank you, your balance is blah," just based on this like random balance piece of code that they've got here, right? So it's just like picking out a random generating a random number. I think if I look at this.
So we could repurpose this for like stock levels for like how many shirts do you have, or like do you have shirts? When you say we got 3 shirts or something, or random number here shirts.
Yeah, so we're probably gonna like beg and steal this logic, which is completely fine, right? We are going to look for a intent named product list. So we do know, like looking at this code, that if the intent name is equal to check balance, or instead we're going to do product list, then what we're going to do is we're going to return whatever is within the product list, and we're going to feed it the intent request. So I'll put that in. Of course, we don't have this function just yet, so we do need to create this function. And I did realize that this is not very pythonic, so I'll make it a little bit more pythonic. Paul, could you tell us what pythonic is? It is, isn't it? I'm a camel case kind of guy.
Like Aaron's the best person to be able to regurgitate specific pieces of documentation.
Terms. Pythonic is what? Is anything that is structured or designed to be used with Python. Structured in the form of and used to be or designed with Python.
Yep.
So it's Pythonic, but camel case is JavaScriptic.
Now we're just making up words.
Pythonic is a real word.
Yeah, Pythonic is a real word. I remember. I actually let me look it up while you're still doing that, and give you the actual definition. Yeah, I love it. So Pythonic is an adjective that describes an approach to computer programming that agrees with the founding philosophy of the Python programming language. There are many ways to accomplish the same task in Python, but there is usually one preferred way to do it, and that's the Pythonic way.
Yep, nice. So I've made this like really baby simple, right? Like I'm just going to return a string, which is we have t-shirts. I have a bit of Python type hinting here, so Python will ignore this when it's run, but I could use this like within my IDE or with some of the Python type hinting tools.
Can you explain to me why you would use Python type hinting and not something like, say, TypeScript?
Because Python is superior, even though I'm probably going to start a war on the stream. But no, I love JavaScript as well. I've kind of like avoided dealing with explicitly calling out types in the past, which is why I haven't really given too much of a go to TypeScript. Not because I don't like them and it's a fantastic language. I know most people watching probably build things in TypeScript. More like when I'm coding, I want it to be a low overhead and relaxing. Considering I came from Objective-C and C, and I had very strict standards that I keep my code in when I'm building like actual products. And then the stream is a lot of fun, and I really like the abilities that dynamic languages give you to build fast, which is Python and JavaScript.
Yeah.
And my mindset's changing to slowly go back to, types aren't so bad. Maybe I need to get used to them. Maybe I need to become a TypeScript guy, and maybe I need to be using Python. Yeah.
I'll add to that for viewers who maybe don't know us that well. Like, all three of us are software engineers, and all three of us program in many different languages. We do like to use the right language for the right scenario. We do have our preferences, obviously, around different languages, what we would use, like at the middle layer, say C# versus Java, or at the top layer, JavaScript versus Python and the like. But we all can interchangeably use the same languages. But for those of you who do know me, yes, I much prefer JavaScript over Python. But in this actual example, many times I would actually choose Python as the actual LEX Lambda over JavaScript, just because of the nature of Python being very easy to read. In this case, yes, Matt has added some type hinting, but in the fact that if I need to pump out something very quick for a Lambda for an integration with LEX, as you can see, what Matt's doing right now on the screen, it's very quick, it's very simple. It's basically define what's the function you're going to use the structure that LEX is looking for, and spit it out. So you can have many of these blocks, whereas if you were to start using, say, TypeScript, and now we're getting into having to understand what are the types, you need to create your interfaces. Then, if you've got a function that receives a type, you make sure you have that interface. It just becomes too much for a very quick and simple integration with LEX. So that is where actually I, as a JavaScript or TypeScript preferred programmer, when it's at the top layer, I would choose Python. What about you, Paul?
I would choose whatever happens to be the flavor of the day. And I think, like you said, right tool for the right job by Trillian. Like, sometimes it's interesting to use the wrong tool for the job, just to see like what it feels like, what are the differences, what are the struggles you're running into, and to help give you the appreciation of the right tool for the right job as well. And like we do spend a lot of time building proof of concepts, like for our customers and whatever we're doing. Sometimes it's interesting to be able to explore and figure out what is the right tool for the right job by potentially using the wrong tool for the job. So,
and we've done that a few times,
never
which is always fun.
C or C++ to write a web app, It's
well,
possible,
I mean,
but I would never do it.
That, but I had a customer last year that we needed to write Lambda functions in C++.
And
true. Put a whole pipeline in C++, and honestly, like, it wasn't as bad as I expected. Like, there is an SDK for it, and we had it deployed and we had it running up there. And the reason we specifically did that is because there was a bunch of pre-existing audio file processing libraries, mathematics processing libraries built in C++ that enables us to not have to recode that or port it to another language. It was easy enough to do.
Yeah, that's it. But that's a great example of where you're actually utilizing something else that already exists. Like, yes, the audio processing libraries are in a lower level language, so it actually makes sense to then do the rest of your project in that lower level language, and then overcome the boundary between. There's a lot more that you need to write to make it a web executable, or make it a Lambda. Actually, as a Lambda, it's just like a service file. So, like, realistically, it's just executing it in the Lambda environment in your micro VM. It makes perfect sense to utilize a lower level language when you're interacting with lower level libraries. If you were building the audio processing libraries from scratch, I'm sure you probably would have chosen something more relevant for a mid-level or higher level application. Yeah,
well, that one was specifically performance related around like difficult analysis. So you need something like highly performant. So C++ was a good choice for that. I think at the end of it, we ended up, because it started to become complicated, we had two mechanisms. One, we had the C++ Lambda functions execute completely standalone. Then all of the actual work, like manipulating the payload and the responses and all this that comes out of the back of it, was done by Python. Python then called the secondary Lambda and executed it. And I think we also toyed with the idea of packaging that C++ application as a binary, deploying the binary alongside my Python application, and then doing a system call to execute that binary on the machine as well.
Yeah. See, this is going to start a war now, but this is when I have conversations around AI ML, right? Like, everyone's like, oh, of course you use Python for ML. And I'm like, well, no, actually, all of the work that I've done in AI/ML, like I'm not a data modeler, so I don't do a lot of the modeling of the data and teaching the algorithm and building the inference. The work that I've done in AI/ML is more on the integration and actually writing out of the algorithms, like working as a team to help write an algorithm. All of that's been in C and C++. Like everything exactly that like you just said is you use your Jupyter notebooks to write your Python and build your inference, but actually all of the underlying libraries that you're calling, they're all lower level libraries. It's not this misconception that everyone thinks that AI/ML it's all Python. Actually, it's not. It's just the
It's all C
modeling
under the hood.
and the building. Yeah, it's all C
Yeah.
under the hood. Like, but I just think that speaks volumes to the like the right tool for the right task argument, like the interoperability between languages. Now we can actually write C libraries for Python to develop further what we want Python to be functionally capable of, and then it integrates with everything else that we've already got in the C space.
Nice. Well, I think it's time to actually like build a Lambda for this, right? So I won't go to the stream, but I'll go back to my AWS console. So what I want to do is I probably want to create. Oh, I've been signed out. It's great.
That's what happens when you do ClickOps for everything.
Hey, ClickOps
We
is
should build
fantastic.
The CDK app.
I'll stop sharing my screen and I will log back into my AWS account. Let me fix this up.
Or why aren't we using SAM?
Why not? We could be using SAM, but ClickOps is fast. We can do an episode on SAM if we want to build properly in CDK. But actually, like Paul and I had a conversation. I think it was late last week, actually, Paul. Like, we have not built anything in SAM for a very long time because we've built the Lambdas within CDK.
Yeah. And because we were looking how SAM went and deployed those functions. It was specifically about how SAM like packages up your dependencies when you do a SAM build and then SAM deploy. When you do a SAM build, it packages up those dependencies and uploads them specifically for the environment that you're deploying to. And I'm pretty sure that all of that happens within the containerized environment. So it happens inside a container locally with the build when you do a SAM build, which is why you need like Docker to have SAM. I didn't have any SAM projects on my local machine, like since I've got this new computer, because I just hadn't used it so long.
Yeah.
Some of the mocking utils are pretty cool as well with SAM, and yeah.
I actually only use SAM for one thing. Like that is more often than not, I'll choose CDK to develop something, but I use SAM for all of its .NET libraries. So when I want to turn like a .NET Web API, we did an episode on this, like deploying a .NET Web API, which is running locally in Kestrel, but actually you want to run it up on API Gateway with a Lambda, and actually demonstrate how you can take the .NET framework structure, so your controller with all your functions inside the controller, and make it work as a serverless. So that's where I use SAM. Anything outside of that it's all CDK.
Yep. Yeah, I think for viewers as well, it's easy to do a lot of the stuff with LEX through the console the first time, right? But
yeah,
you definitely want to think about things more programmatically. Is my screen back up?
No, it's up now.
I was really just trying to eat into the time while you were logging in, because realistically, I think the best way to learn something from the start, like with demonstrating LEX, demonstrating how we're actually going to link together the Lambda with the LEX, it makes more sense to do it in the console, so you can see what you're actually linking together and where you're doing it. When you become adept at developing, say, a LEX bot, then by all means, do it through CDK and deploy it out, because you know where everything's connected. You can visualize it in your head, but until you've actually seen it, how it works and where it happens, you're not going to know.
Yep. Now, I've got an interesting choice here. Do I go for x86, x64, or go for ARM?
I think you go ARM.
I think you have to go for ARM.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go ARM, right? Like, let's support ARM. So let's go with ARM. Now, this got me thinking. We are going to enter into an interesting thing where we're going to have to give a new execution role to run this, like permissions to LEX. So I might not bother doing that just yet. I just want to get my code in first. But then we're going to have a quick look up, and I've got to remind myself through the documentation. This is where Google's developer's best friend as to what the policies for permissions are. Actually, I'll give it a go without going to the documentation first.
Yep.
And if I get
So
stuck,
obviously you need Lambda execution policy, but you also need LEX API execution.
Yep. Okay, here we go. Look at that. We have
It's very pythonic Lambda.
somewhat. We have the Lambda to go ahead and deploy, which is great. So that's all sitting there. I reckon what we are going to do is we are going to see if we can get the LEX side of the equation set up, and then I will muck around with IAM permissions. And I might grab the ARN just in case I need it, because I'm not too sure as to whether LEX needs an exact ARN or if it can kind of just loosely find this Lambda that I've created on my account. So I'm going back into that product list. So this was the intent that we made before. The closing response needs to change because we don't want it to say the same thing. I'm going to say which one would you like, because I think if I go back to VS Code, we have t-shirts, or we have a t-shirt, or we have t-shirts. Let's go with that. We have t-shirts. Which one do we? Which one would you like? That's a nice conversation. It's not going to give me an Oscar for books, which is not a thing as well.
I was thinking, just to show slightly more advanced, do you want to add a data slot for, like which one would you like? Just like a size data slot, so small, medium, or large, or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. Because we're kind of filling in. Actually, yeah, this is where we've got to think about it a little bit more. We should create a few slots first. No. What we want to do is we want to go into the detail for another intent.
Correct.
Yeah. This is where thinking on the fly doesn't work sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
First,
This
we
is the
want to
importance
what
of
they want.
Yeah.
Then
This
we
is the
want to figure
importance
out
of
what they want to size.
Yeah, and then we want to start using slots in the next thing where it's like you go through t-shirt size, if it's men's, women's, unisex, like whatever it is that the t-shirt company offers, you go into these details.
You can see how we're just throwing things around and like building stuff out, right? But if you engage like an organization who specialize in like chatbots and conversational flow, they spend the entire first third of the project just on conversational design, right? So they cover off all of the different pathways that a conversation can go before even getting into what technology we're going to build it on. Is it in LEX? Is it in Alexa? Or, like just conversational flow is a big part of building out your chatbot. So if you go away and build out your flow before you even start building your chatbot, you'll have solved a lot of the issues that you'll come across, like we're facing now. Okay, which intent do we need? What's the utterance? What are the data slots we need? You'll know all of that just through the conversational flow.
Yep. So what we want, I think, for this is we want a fulfillment Lambda hook, because I think the which one is going to prompt people to hit the next intent within their journey. But what we want is before which one's asked, we want to call a Lambda function for fulfillment. So I've just gone into fulfillment. If you watched, I went into advanced options, and I ticked use a Lambda for fulfillment. And there is nowhere to add the Lambda, and this is where I'm always playing around with the UI, but I think the code hooks is what I want to tick here. If I remember correctly. Let's have a quick think about it together. Fulfillment. Blah. There used to be in LEX v1 a way to add the Lambda.
Use Lambda code hook. You just had it there. Top. Use a Lambda function for fulfillment.
Yeah, so I tick that, but usually in LEX v1 that actually opened up to selecting the Lambda. So that's kind of where I'm scratching my head.
Good point.
And then code hook's optional. I was hoping that would open up the dialog to select the Lambda. you know what? Like we are building on the fly. So
Just click save.
let me,
What happens, right?
Go
yeah,
down again. Wait. Go back into your intent. Yep. Go down. You've got context optional. Up. Down. Input context. Is that your... No. Okay, that's not what I'm thinking.
no, this is if you want to share the context from previous
Yeah,
inputs that the
from
user
previous...
said
Yeah,
in the
but then
conversation.
it
Yep.
used to have an option that said validate. Like you can use a Lambda to validate, so it's not just... So keep going down. Go up to the actual that guy. Yep. Can you open up confirm prompt and decline response? No, these are just the actual responses. What about fulfillment?
This is
Open
where we
that up.
were. This is where it used to be back in the day. So it used to be just here, actually.
Yeah, there's no way. Successors go down, fulfill response, keep going down, timeout response. That's it. There's nowhere to actually. All right, let me quickly Google it while you're looking.
Yeah, I was wondering because the lambdas are usually shared across intents, so I was just going to go up and see if I can find it in the settings somewhere. So let's have a look. Got languages. We have training resources. It's not what we want. We're not going in generating a channel. That would be like, let's drop this into WhatsApp or Slack.
So the documentation says exactly what we just tried to do. So you click on the use a Lambda function for initialization and validation. From the LEX bot, choose the name of the bot. Yes, we've done that. Version for your deployment for aliases. Yes, we've done that. You indicate that an intent should use a Lambda function using the console or the create intent or update intent operation. Yes. In the intent editor, you turn on Lambda functions in the code hook selection. You define the Lambda function to use in each bot alias. The same Lambda function. Yeah, okay, so it's in the alias. This is slightly different in version 2.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was like, maybe because you usually do share across intents. So I was like, maybe there's a way to hook it in here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go.
Yeah, open the LEX console. From the list of bots, choose the name of the bot that you want to use. From create version and aliases for deployment, choose view aliases. From the list of aliases, choose the name of the alias that you want to use. From the list of supported languages, choose the language that the Lambda function is used for. Choose the name of the Lambda function to use.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, here we go. So we've put that into alias. And I did remember, like, you can tie it to a language because you might have different responses based on the
Multi-language
different
deploy.
languages.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so this is going to break, right? Like, so if we go back into the editor and then we try and test the spot, very quickly jump it through. Let's try a spelling error. Yeah, here we go. So cannot construct instance of intent response, no string argument, construct a factory method to serialize, blah, blah, blah. So it actually looks like it has permission to the Lambda without actually needing anything fancy, which is interesting. Like it has actually gotten the return value here.
That's the fulfillment value that you've got in your LEX bot.
So
Are you sure that that's happening, Matt, or is that just returning that error because it's like returning a denied access error?
If you go to your product list intent, I believe that's the fulfillment response.
Yeah, so the fulfillment response is nothing, right?
Oh, okay,
and
okay. So
the
it is
closing
actually-
response is which one you
Yeah,
like.
which one
So
would
it
you like?
actually,
Yeah, so it
it
has
actually
picked it
looks
up.
like it does have permission to talk to LEX, and it is
Just
realizing the intent
realize it.
within LEX. It's just the serialization that we need to play with, which is cool.
Yep. Awesome.
So
Easy.
that's a lot
Back to
easier
the
than it
Lambda.
used to be, folks. If people remember LEX v1, let's go back to Lambda and see how we can sort this this one out. I'm pretty happy with that. I was not looking forward to working out what permissions I needed on my Lambda. Let us know if you've had any funky times with with IAM permissions. I'm sure everyone on this has spent hours sometimes trying to find a particular permission that's needed for something.
Are you in the right region on Lambda?
I should be. I've got 33 functions here, and that does not look like 33. I think it's just the pagination.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. So let's have a look.
What are you returning?
You know, like we're doing it like dumbly, right? Like we should have looked at like what
Returning a
existed.
string.
Yeah,
you need
that's
to
right.
return-
So we go.
Yeah, an object.
Yep. So text equals blah, and what we want is we want a
Return
message
closed.
to wrap everything in.
Yeah.
And content type, because you can have rich content as well. You can actually use cards and things within LEX
Yeah.
as well.
I think we mentioned that last episode.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I
to
do
demonstrate
actually
when
want
we
cards to
build
show
the
the
UI.
match as well. Like,
Right.
yeah. And then we'll feed it the text, and then
I think when we actually build the UI, we'll do that. Hey, we'll like display the list of product list, t-shirts, socks, whatever, as card, just to demonstrate how
Yep.
to use a card.
and that's
You
right.
know, they should invent this a function to be able to highlight and copy something and then move it and paste it somewhere else.
Yeah, that would be handy. It would save you retyping like stuff that you've just typed like not long before.
Would be
Leave
very
me alone.
pythonic.
Here we go. So technically, this should work now, right?
Yeah. Because it
But,
will
like-
deserialize it.
Yeah, but like we're not returning a string, so let's fail for type hinting now. We are looking for an object to be returned, which is this.
Yeah.
So
let's
let's
go up
test-
to your close function. Yeah,
Does
yeah,
it look
all
right?
good. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Cool. Let's not test. Let's
Deploy.
just deploy.
Does
That's
that
how we
close
do
function
things.
exist? Let's just make sure that that is uncommented. Because I think that all that's doing is packaging that up into a nice little packet to send back. But let's
Yeah,
make
and
that-
this is where we have a close function. So if people
Yep.
wanted to see,
Yep.
this was like built into the
It's in the
template as
example.
well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you've got illicit intents. You've got get session attributes, get slots. So I've got like the slots are probably going to be handy for the next one that we build, right?
So this,
Um,
this structure, this is what I was talking about around the logic for continuing a conversation, right? Because a conversation isn't just send, receive, send, receive. It's like send, receive, continue, send, receive, like because you're continuing on the conversation. When we get into the UI and actually designing that part of it, it may seem a little bit complex, but if you get your head around these little snippets of structure now around session state, message, where we're at in terms of the fulfillment of the intent and that stuff, it'll make much more sense when we get into conversational flow.
Yep. So let's give it a go, right? Like I'm actually optimistic now that it is going to work, but we will see. I've been bitten by that optimism many different times. So we will go back into the test screen.
Okay.
Go
Oh,
hi
the
there.
t-shirt.
Want a t-shirt. Oh, here we go. What have we done wrong now? Lambda blah 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 encountered an error. The error message from is unhandled. Check
Maybe
the
it
Lambda
didn't
function log.
understand utterance. Well, it should because that's one of the utterances in the LEX.
Open a second tab. Let's have a look at the CloudWatch log, see if there's any indicators in there.
Yeah, let's do that.
Good point. Debugging. Or
So
an
hopefully
easier
this
way
is
to get to it
interesting.
would
We
be
wanted to get back to coding a bit more in the show and mucking around. So hopefully it's fun for people to see things break. We want to kind of
Instead of-
reintroduce that. Yeah.
going through it and trying to find it this way. You're there now, but an easier way for people to do this would be from your Lambda, you go down to the config and go to logging, click on CloudWatch logs, and it'll take you to the log group that Matt's at now. Okay, you're going to demonstrate it.
Well, multiple ways, right? Like I actually
Yeah.
usually go from, if I could spell, I usually go from
Yeah, so
the screen
you go
actually
over
here.
to monitor, or is it? Yeah, monitor.
Yeah, it's
And
monitor.
then over
yeah.
to view logs in CloudWatch. Done.
Yeah.
And that'll actually open up the right log group instead of having to go into CloudWatch, find the log group, and step in. So now we can see the latest logs. The session attributes is not defined traceback.
We might not actually need that thinking about it. So let's have a look at the code.
But we don't have any session variable or session attributes set at the moment anyway.
Yeah, we don't. Session attributes, like we can.
You haven't defined it. You haven't defined it in your product.
Yeah,
list.
we haven't defined in the function. So let's have a look at like kind of the things that get fed in. There's attributes, there's slots, there's the accounts. Actually, it's just the attributes that we need. I'm just wasting time.
Slots is just for your data. Your session attributes are variables that are handed across your intents. But if there's we haven't set any. So even if you do your get session attributes, at this point here, it should just make it null. Now you'll hand through a null list. There'll be no object. So it should technically work now. As long as you've got the get session attributes.
We'll want slots and stuff like that like later. But
yeah.
Let's go back in here. So
you have to make this work in the next 3 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But usually we're perfect timing, right? We have t-shirts. Yes.
We have t-shirts.
So the Lambda is working, and I'm just going to say great. Perfect. Fallback intent is fulfilled.
Fallback intent is fulfilled. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, fallback intent.
Great.
Great. Exactly. So I did notice that there was no closing response. Like it didn't actually prompt the user which one would they want, right? So what I might do is I might add it to
you know why? I can tell you why you
Yep.
did that. Yeah, because you're on fulfillment, right? So you handed back from your Lambda success in fulfillment. So it's already gone and said, all right, well, you've successfully filled, so it doesn't have to close. And then you did great, so it doesn't know what the closing response is. But if you do exactly what you're doing now, put it on success fulfillment, now it will work.
Yep, and I'll turn off that closing response. I just click that slider there. And then I will build again. Let's see. I think this is going to be right on time. But next time we get onto this, we'll start to play with having slots. As we mentioned, t-shirt sizes, t-shirt types. We might think of a couple of products, and feel free in the chat next time to go, we want a Rubik's Cube. We want pajama pants, whatever it is. Okay, so here we go.
Maybe next episode we'll still be in the console looking at slots and session variables and the like. Then maybe 2 episodes later we might start getting into the UI and start actually building out the interaction that Matt's doing now through the LEX console, but actually have our own window that we can send conversation through.
And I think we're going to have to look at the fulfillment bug here. So it's not actually prompting which one we'd like.
Oh, yeah.
So we have t-shirts, but I was really impressed that it actually knew I want treasure. So, like considering how abstract that is, like between I'm a treasure goblin, give me your loot. Yeah.
Go back to your Lambda, have a look at the fulfillment. Where have you got success? Fulfilled. Shouldn't that be, is that fulfilled or success? Okay, it says fulfilled in other ones.
Yeah, it does say fulfilled in other ones.
And it
but like that state goes into the close, so let's have a look at what the close is doing here, right?
After you click build, did you then click test to make sure you were refreshing the right one? Was it using the old bot or anything?
I think I did.
So fulfillment state is added to the intent request at the top. The state is fulfilled. And then the intent request goes into the request attributes. No, the state goes into... Where does the state go? I don't see it. It's just added into the intent request, but it's not... The state isn't actually being returned.
This looks like a bug that we can explore next time, I reckon. I will give Paul's method of let's just do a build and a test again, considering, you know, it used to take like 5 minutes to do a build, even for a simple bot back in LEX v1.
Oh, yeah.
So this is sped up like
Much
quite
faster now.
massively compared to what it used to be.
Yeah.
And I might just...
Still technically
I'll just go straight to
building
the point,
Oh,
right?
there we go. Yeah.
Type too fast.
But yeah, it just built it, so hit refresh at the top.
So I don't actually have to say greetings either, right? I can just go straight to the intent. We have t-shirts. So it isn't, but that's a bug to solve for next time. And then I think what we'll do is we'll start to add that slots Lambda as well, where the Lambdas that we're going to be building are going to get a lot more complicated, which is going to be fairly fun to do.
The good thing is that we've shown like the actual technical implementation of the programming and setting up the Lambdas was pretty easy, right? It's just familiarizing yourself with the console.
That was so much easier than LEX v1 to do, like with like the complex IAM roles, I tell you.
Yeah.
And when you know where to link the Lambda.
Yep.
Yeah, like automating it is all something that you'll want to do in the future, but like working through the console to understand how those pieces fit together is also very valuable and important as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice.
Well, that was really awesome, Matt. Thanks everyone for your questions and feedback. We had one suggestion for swag, which was silicon phone cases. Let's see if we can get some more to come through.
Not a bad one. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks
too many
everybody.
phone cases. We'd have to standardize.
Apple iPhone only.
No, we'll support like some of the other flagships as well, I guess.
Yep. That would be that would be a tough one there, right?
Yep.
But yeah, thanks everybody for coming along. Next week, Aaron, doesn't matter, rain, hail, or shine, will be out in his shed.
Fair enough.
Might have a big jacket on.
Yeah.
But he's committed to doing that, and it should be great. It should be great fun. Matt, enjoy the warm Brisbane weather. Everybody else, those people in New York and California, enjoy if you're in California, enjoy your nice warm weather. If New York, I forgot it's probably pretty nice this time of year over there. For the rest of us within, Melbourne, well, hopefully we've got a big fire going in the background. So take care, everybody, and see you all same place, same time next week.
See you all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.